Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody for attending this hybrid meeting of the Overrun Scrutiny Committee on Thursday, the 1st of October. And I hope you all had a pleasant summer break and back to business. We've had some members present in the Lancastrian, one member. Some joining from home and some members of the public are welcome to observe from the committee room 1 where the meeting is being streamed. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Councillor John Walker. I am the chair of this committee. Councillor Roy Lees is the vice chair. Please note this is an audio-only meeting. It is being recorded and the video stream will be also uploaded to YouTube after the meeting. For each item, I will invite members to use the raise hand function on your iPad to make any comments to ensure each member has the opportunity to speak and that they are not speaking over each other. When speaking, please refer to the paragraph so that everybody can follow what you're asking about. Please mute your microphone and video feed when you are not. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can I ask all members to confirm that they can hear and speak before the meeting. I will call out each member. Councillor Peter Gabbett. Councillor Yvonne Hargreaves.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Alex Hilton.
Yes, Chair, present.
Thank you. Councillor Zena Khan. Councillor Marion Lowe.
Present, Chair.
Oh, good evening. Good evening. Councillor Matthew Lynch. Councillor June Molyneux.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Murfitt. Councillor Deborah Platt.
I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Sloan.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kim Snape.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Margaret France.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Roy Lees.
Here, Chair.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair. Sorry, it's Councillor Peter Gabbett. I was having a few technical difficulties, but I'm now on.
No problem. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you.
Right, we'll move on to the agenda now. Apologies for absence. No apologies. No apologies. Right. No apologies. Right. Item 1 is minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, the 2nd of July, 2020. Is that a true record of the meeting? If you can cast your minds back to July time, seems a long time ago.
Move those, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any comments from those minutes or any observations? Thank you. Well, move on to item 2, declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. As this is a virtual meeting, if a member has a pecuniary interest, they are requested to leave the call completely rather than just mute their microphone. The member can rejoin the call following the completion of the item in question. Any declaration of an interest? No, thank you. Item number 3, public questions. Public questions? No. Okay, we'll move on to item 4. To consider the executive cabinet minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of July, which are, these were discussed at the, well, I'm saying discussed, but approved by council on Tuesday. But if anybody's got any questions? No. Okay, we'll move on then to item 5, which is notice of executive decisions. Do any members have any comments on the notices that are enclosed? Pages 19 to 60. They are I must admit, it's very impressive to see so many decisions being made by the council during this difficult time with the pandemic. It just shows the council is working efficiently and doing the job it should be doing. So well done to all officers and directors concerned. Thank you. If anybody's got any queries on these decisions, probably not tonight if you haven't had a chance to look at them all, but if you feel there's any that we should discuss, then by all means get in touch or let Nina know, and we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting or when the decisions come up. I can't hear what you're saying. You what? Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a question.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Roy.
I've got my hand up. Well, I have my hand up.
I haven't been looking at the screen.
Just wait a minute. Where are we? Yeah, on the acquisition of Alkaline Bridge. Is that the bridge going over the railway line?
Oh, I don't know, Roy. What page are you on anyway?
23.
Page 23.
Acquisition of Alkaline Bridge.
Yeah.
I thought any bridge going over the railway line was the property of the railway.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can query that. Something I can't help with, but I will take it up with. Well, I can get if Nina can find that out for tomorrow. Can you let me know and let Roy know? That would help. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody got any queries or questions? If not, we'll move on to item 6, which is health scrutiny, to consider the work plan of Lancashire County Council's Health Scrutiny Committee. The councillor represented on the committee is Councillor Margaret France, who's here tonight. So, Margaret, can you please update us on what's been happening at County? Please, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Chair and members. It's a brief
Can anybody hear anything?
No.
No, we can't. Margaret, we can't hear you. Margaret, we can't hear you.
Can't get on. Here we are.
Can hear you now.
Can hear you now.
Sorry about that.
Start again, please.
Technical problems. Yes. Doesn't help, does it? Right, we'll start from the beginning. Yeah. It was a brief update on the Lancashire County Council Health Scrutiny meeting of the 15th of September. And I would like to just add an addendum to that, which is following the announcement for the closure of Chorley ED, if members think that is suitable to be included, because obviously before this, on the 15th of September, that decision had not at that time been made. So, first of all, the discussion was about the 111 first system, and Amanda Doyle, who is the ICS lead, presented this, and it's the concept is to have all emergencies first assessed by phone or internet triage, unless they're absolute blue light 999 flashing emergencies. So the idea is to reduce waiting times in the A&E departments and reduce the risk of transmission of COVID in waiting areas and the like. So the idea is it reduces overcrowding and it would make the emergency department run more smoothly. Perhaps the cynical members might think that, well, you don't really want an appointment for an emergency, they just happen. But in actual fact, a lot of people who present at the emergency department would be suitable to be seen within a couple of hours or more. And they're looking at possibly mental health appointments in that way, GP appointments to be made in that way, and even palliative care. So it's likely that up to 60% of people who would currently self-present to A&E would be suitable to be screened and triaged by 111 first and given a time at which to present themselves. So the plan is that by the end of November, this will be rolled out across all of the Northwest. Call takers will run this after a mandatory training period. I'm told that it will be a relatively local scheme. In other words, Bolton will be the centre where this is operated for the entire Northwest. And I asked the question about how long these call takers would have training for. And it's a bit like 111 was before. It'll be a 6-week mandatory training followed by supervision by some clinical staff in the room. The next article was about adult social care on winter preparations. I found it very interesting to hear that there are over 420 care homes across Lancashire. So it was how to support the care sector during the COVID-19. And they really went through all the things that are already in place and things that have proved extremely helpful, such as daily welfare calls to each and every of those homes to make sure not just the residents but the staff were coping, weekly Zoom webinars to keep up to date, and support with COVID-19 costs in terms of PPE and stuff. There was a short discussion on infection prevention and control in social care settings. And hopefully there'll be weekly testing for COVID-19 for the staff and monthly for the residents to make sure that staff aren't bringing the condition into the nursing home. And then we had a long discussion about test and trace. And as you can imagine, there was a long discussion and questions raised about the lack of availability of the testing across the area. The final item was about the flu vaccine programme for 2021, which is to be run by NHS England. This year, you may know that it's to be extended, but as well as the usual groups of children 2 to 11, clinical at-risk groups, all pregnant women and over 65s, long-standing residential care residents, etc., etc. But the intention is to also vaccinate every adult between the ages of 50 and 64, but that can only be if the supply allows to do that. And so that age group will be offered the vaccination probably December or later. And that really was the conclusion of the Health Scrutiny meeting. But if members are interested about I thought you might want to brief 2 minutes about the emergency department. The decision to not reopen the emergency department wasn't taken until the 21st of September, and it's a delay, it's a postponement rather than a cancellation, as it were, because of the difficulties recruiting staff. And only this afternoon, the board meeting of the Lancashire Teaching Hospitals Trust was updating the information about the staffing. The building is now COVID compliant. So in essence, when Chorley Emergency Department reopens, there will be, in fact, 4 EDs across our area. There will be COVID and non-COVID areas in both Preston and Chorley. So as you can imagine, it's not just reopening Chorley Emergency Department as it was before. It will have 2 separate streams. So the number of additional staff to supply this is quite large. All of the healthcare assistants have been recruited, all of the nurses have been recruited, but it's the medical staff that's proving difficult. The NHS England have declared that Chorley Emergency Department is not a suitable place for students of emergency medicine because of the lack of the wide range of services that they would need to be exposed to. So it means that only middle grades and consultants can be employed there. They needed 2 consultant posts. One has been appointed and the other one there's a very strong likelihood of a second one being available around about December, January. Of the 10 middle grades that were needed, there are now 7. So I think we're looking in quite a good position to be looking at reopening it sometime in the winter. So it's being reviewed in December, and if things go according to plan, I'd like to think we might have an emergency department again by January. Okay, I think that's probably long enough. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Chair, can I just say, There's been a message from Councillor Hilton. The technology's failed.
All right.
Oh,
Right.
is that all of the technology? Or
I
Right.
don't know, but he can't hear the proceedings. He sent a message through.
All right.
do we know whether other people can't either?
I don't know because they might not know that function.
I've had it intermittently.
Hi,
Intermittently, I can
councillors.
hear.
Councillor Hilton's back in the meeting now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. So Councillor Hilton's back with us. Very
Can you
good.
hear us, Councillor
Okay.
Hilton?
Can you hear Councillor Hilton? You're still muted.
Yeah, he's on mute.
Councillor Hilton, can you hear us? Are you back yet, Councillor Hilton? Ah, you're back on screen.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Finally.
Finally, we're okay, are we now?
I hope so. Apologies, Chair. I don't know what's happening. I just got a blank screen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can hear you now. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Has anybody got any questions? I've just got one or two, Margaret. You say that the new A&E at Chorley is going to be, half of it's going to be ordinary patients and the other half COVID. What happens to people now who get COVID? Do they all go to Preston?
I think because there is no emergency department at Chorley to speak at the present time, there is a GP-led urgent care centre, but a lot of people with COVID will be managed at home, of course. The ones that need hospitalisation, really, if they're quite sick from a respiratory point of view, if there's any possibility they might need ventilation, they would have to go to Preston.
Right. Thank you. I've just got one other question. Was there any talk at the Scrutiny meeting about getting the hospital up and running? Because you hear of so many hospitals that all seem to be working to 3/4 capacity, and the consultants saying they haven't got enough work to do because the hospital isn't working full time. Was that brought up about Preston?
Yeah, I think there's been a steady stream of kind of picking up the day-to-day business of the routine surgery and this type of thing, and that's obviously a priority because a lot of routine things will have been put on the back burner whilst the springtime COVID epidemic was at its peak. But as far as possible, work as normal will continue, and I think the hope is that now that there are more treatments coming online. Hopefully less people will need to be having such intensive resuscitation and critical care. Yeah. But it remains to be seen, really, is the answer to that.
Yeah. Okay. Any further questions from anybody?
Well, yes, I've got a question.
Yes, right. Okay, right.
Yeah, Margaret, just wondering on your first item regarding the 111 for appointments. Yeah. Presumably, if you ring up, the triage will assess how much of an emergency you are. Yeah. And give you a time which could be 3 hours or 4 hours later.
That's right.
So if you ring up at say 10 and you were given a time at 2 o'clock and you turn up at 2 o'clock, but in the meantime they've had emergencies come in, you're going to be waiting, you'll be put back. Am I right?
I think there will always be a danger of that, Roy, because if you have a sort of multiple vehicle road traffic accident, that's always going to take precedence. But these things are not common. But I think
But there's nothing in practice, so that if there is something like that, the person who's got an appointment at 2 can be informed that it's put back.
I honestly don't know the answer to that one, Roy, to be fair. I suspect that they will try and space out the walking wounded, as it were, so that the A&E department isn't overwhelmed at any one time. And then hopefully, if there is some sort of major disaster, there'll be enough staff to deal with the acute, whilst perhaps one person can get on with doing the more routine stuff. I can't answer that question with any degree of certainty. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Margaret.
Okay.
Councillor Hilton, do you want to ask a question?
So it's just really a comment. Sorry, I've only got half of what we've been talking about, but and I'm going to go back to it again. Someone that works on the front line of the NHS, I think it's absolutely appalling that we are having to book appointments to go to an accident and emergency department. And I would argue that anybody that can actually wait for an appointment should not be going to an accident and emergency department to begin with. It is an absolute disgrace. NHS 111 are call handlers. They're trained on computer systems, not on patient care. This whole system is a recipe for disaster, and I can't condemn it enough. Anyway, just a comment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Don't want to make any comment, Margaret?
Well, if I could just come back on that, Alex, and say, but as an ex-clinician myself, I find it really quite worrying that someone in Bolton could book my GP appointments in Withnell, whilst having really no knowledge of the patient's background, presumably, and I just find that really quite unpleasant. The thought that someone else is taking control of who I see and when our own receptionist might know that this particular person rings up every day of the week and says they've got chest pain because they're just lonely and they want to chat.
Absolutely. In my personal experience of 111, they told me to take paracetamol and I had chloroquine syndrome, which, for those that don't know, is a surgical emergency, and I required emergency spinal surgery. So it is not a good system. It is healthcare done on the cheap, and it is an absolute disgrace.
Okay. Any further comment, Margaret?
Yeah, as a clinician, as I say, I would tend to agree with that. The thought of giving somebody 6 weeks training and putting maybe 20 of them in a room with one trained person really fills me with dread. But that, I'm afraid, is the system as it's going to be moving forwards.
But can I just ask, wait a minute, presumably because of the COVID, a lot of people aren't using A&E, whereas before, if they had a headache and they couldn't get a doctor's appointment, they go to A&E now. But presumably they're not doing that. They're probably ringing the doctor and probably speaking to a doctor quicker than if they made an appointment.
They are going to A&E. They still are going there, Chair. That's the problem. People are going there with broken fingernails, they're going there with sore throats, and they're also going there with COVID. I work in an A&E department just up the road in Wigan, and I see it every day, and it really is getting to the point where I'm really seriously concerned, very concerned.
Well, I think this is a national system, so we don't really have a great deal of power over whether we have it or we haven't got it. I think it's one of these where someone's come up with a bright idea and we all have to jump to it, but time will tell, won't it? So like I say, I share your concerns, Alex. Thank you.
You're muted, John.
Roy, do you want to ask another question? Your hand's still up. Roy. Oh, he's gone off. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for all that. It's very, very informative. And let's hope what you're saying about the A&E probably opening early in the new year will be a great asset to Chorley. So thank you for that. If you want to... Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the drop-down box, the normal one, to put my hand up. So right. I don't know what's happened. I just wondered if I could ask Margaret before we, go. Is that all right?
Yeah, fine.
Margaret, presumably people can just turn up at A&E if they want to, rather than ring up.
Yes, I would assume so, but I think the intention is to try to prevent that happening if it is something that is relatively, shall we say, yeah, I think Alex hit the nail on the head when he said they didn't ought to be in the first place. It would more appropriately go to the GP. So if you've got one common gateway, shall we say, to NHS appointments, then that person who is triaging the call would most be in the position to say to the person, well, yeah, if you've got I don't know, a boil on your thumb, you can go to your own GP with that. You don't need an A&E department. Do you know what I mean? So we're acting as a filter, so that maybe, well, I would hope that people who are seen in A&E need to be there, and the ones who might be more appropriately managed in another setting are then diverted to that setting. And that's the plan.
All right. Sounds like a nightmare, but never mind. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just to help you, Yvonne.
Yeah.
Just to help you, Yvonne. The "and" is not on the 3 dots anymore. It's to the left of the video.
Oh, right. Okay. Thanks for that,
Roy.
Roy. Thank you. No.
They're all at the bottom of the screen. They should be.
There's a little hand.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
We got it. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so thank you, Margaret. If you want to stop and listen to the rest of the meeting, you can do with pleasure, but if you want to depart, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a Withnail Parish Council meeting very shortly, so I will leave now. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we can move on to item 7, air quality update. I'm looking forward to this. Is Zoe Whiteside and Caroline are going to present this?
Good evening. Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hope you can hear me.
Yes, thank you.
I will start us, and then Caroline will come in afterwards. Caroline's more of an expert in this field, so I'll give a quick overview, and then Caroline will give. And Caroline's better placed than I am to answer detailed questions about air quality, but between us, I'm sure we can answer your questions.
I'm certain you will be able to do. Yeah.
So I can advise members that we are working on a draft air quality strategy. We recognise this is a priority for members, and it's something of particular interest. We would have hoped to brought that strategy to members by now, and there has been a little bit of a delay, and I can explain some reasons for that, not least because one of our key officers involved in air quality is somebody called Leslie Miller. I'm sure many of you have met Leslie in environmental health. Obviously she's been sort of busy on COVID works, and that has slowed us down a little bit at the beginning of lockdown. However, I can advise now, but we do have a draft strategy that's starting to kind of take shape, and as part of that, it's linked into a package of work around climate change, which I'm sure many members will be aware of, and that includes looking at provisions for how and what we measure in terms of air quality. So we are going to do kind of a mini options appraisal in terms of what we can do better, really, in terms of what we're measuring, to make sure that we're getting the very best of data around the quality of our air in the borough. And that's linking into a wider pan-Lancashire piece of work to coordinate how air quality is measured and the targets around that. And Caroline can touch on why that's important in a minute, because obviously air isn't stable, and it's important that it's done on a wider geography than just Chorley. Leslie tells me that work was paused pending during the COVID lockdown. Hopefully it's going to be picking up shortly, but there was a pan-Lancashire group that was pulled together to coordinate a piece of work around air quality, and that kind of stalled a little bit. That's not stopped us developing our air quality strategy, but it will be one of the key actions that are that we're looking to take forward. And it will also link into the work that we're doing around trees. Obviously, we've declared a climate emergency, and we know that we've got an emergency tree action plan, and it also links into open spaces and also the local plan. And we are recruiting a climate change coordinator who will lead on a programme of work which will include the implementation of the air quality strategy and the action plan in particular. And that will be delivering a programme of measures across a number of teams, including spatial planning, public protection and so forth. One of the other reasons why we'd kind of held off publishing our strategy and finalising it was we were waiting for further detail from the government around targets on air quality and the requirements in particular expected as part of the Environment Act. However, we've decided that given the kind of delays with getting clarity on that, we are going to bring our draft to CLT in November, and then subject to CLT's feedback and engagement with members, we'll look to publish that in the new year for consultation. So as I mentioned, Caroline's much closer to this area than I am, and she's going to give us now more detail on what we need, what that's going to look like, and in some of a flavour of the targets and the national sort of drivers around air quality. So if I hand over to Caroline.
Thanks, Zoe.
Thanks, Zoe. I hope you can all hear me. I must apologise, first of all, I am in a car, and in about 10 minutes' time, an 8-year-old's about to join me because I had to do this meeting agile working as we do. So, yeah, so I shall go through. So apologies if you do get an interruption of the car opening and closing. Yeah, so Zoe's just gone into a little bit about the background, and one of the things that we've been waiting for is the Ascension of the Environment Bill, and you'll obviously all be aware that that has been delayed. Its readings and commons haven't progressed as quickly as we'd like, and it's only gone through the first couple of stages in the House of Commons and just starting its committee stages. But the Environment Bill is committed to bringing forward more specific targets on specifically particulate matter 2.5. And particulate matter 2.5 is the one that we really need to target, because that's the one that gets into people's lungs and does cause a lot of these respiratory diseases and issues that we are aware of, and is one that the World Health Organization have really targeted as something that needs to be driven down. Now, the government is committed to looking at driving those levels down in the ambient air, but they aren't necessarily at the moment ready to commit to what the World Health Organization suggests is the correct target of 10 micrograms. So this is because the levels in the UK will be significantly above that, and to ensure that as a whole we can deliver those targets would probably require significant investment and would put the whole of the UK effectively in an air quality emergency. Effectively, we wouldn't be able to deliver those targets. So the way they're looking at it is, when they introduce the secondary legislation from the Environment Bill, they will look at better monitoring beforehand to give them some baseline data to work out what's a realistic target, and then to slowly drive those down. But they have got commitments to have targets in place by 2022 and to deliver those targets by 2030. But I say it all depends on what comes out in the Environment Bill. So it's very important that we do watch that and make sure that government don't do what they have pledged they won't do, which is weaken any of the targets within that document. So there are current targets in place which we are required to monitor. These again look at particulate matter 2.5 and 10, ammonia levels, nitrous oxide and dioxide levels, sulfur dioxide, and non-methane volatile organic compounds. And the targets in there, I think we're not doing too badly at delivering. There are some that we haven't met yet, but we have got targets by which we'll have to deliver by 2030. So there are 2020 targets in there, and as of 2019, we were doing okay with the nitrous oxides ones, but on the others we hadn't necessarily met those. But I don't know what the position is this year, because DEFRA haven't updated that data yet. So for Chorley specifically, I thought you might want a little bit more information on what the issues are for Chorley. And if you aren't aware of the information that's available publicly to view on Lancashire County Council website, I think Zoe referred to the joint working, and all the authorities do work on a Lancashire-wide air quality subgroup, and through that there is monitoring of air quality, and it gives some really useful stuff. And there's an insight page and one of those sort of profiles that they produce, and it gives some really useful information. I've taken a little bit off there today, but I can get the link shared to you all to have a look at if you want to. It gives you all information about respiratory information on the impacts of air quality, which I think is something that I know some of the members have raised concern out before. But for Chorley, the issue that is really of importance is nitrous oxides, and across Lancashire 12, or Lancashire as a whole actually, Chorley has the highest levels of nitrous oxide, and that is due to the motorways. So because of the motorways there, that is why you have poor air quality around there. However, outside of the motorway areas as a whole, the air quality is pretty good. So there is information there to state that there's 670 tonnes of nitrous oxide generated from motorway traffic in Chorley in 2018. So that is significant, and it's on a par near enough with what was coming from the industry side in South Ribble, which also has particular issues. And particulate matter 2.5 was also 20.2% of the emissions in Chorley. So that you can, and that's again from road transport. So it is an issue. Road transport is one of the biggest issues, and one of the things that through the local plan we are hoping to be able to tackle in more detail. But I say the local plan is one method of doing it, and obviously the air quality strategy feeds into that. But at the moment, because Chorley does not have any statutory requirement to produce an air quality action plan, because its air quality levels are considered acceptable, it is all voluntary what we're doing in here. However, the council is committed to doing, as the air quality strategy, as Zoe mentioned. And I can run through a little bit about what will be covered in the air quality strategy. Some of the points that are already covered already, like tree planting, working collaboratively. But I'm not sure exactly what members would like me to discuss in a bit more detail now. So I'll pause and let you come back to me.
You're muted.
Sorry, you're
muted, John. You're muted, John.
Roy.
Right, it's up to me. Yeah, Caroline. Where do we do the tests? Are there specific areas where we do them? I mean, you mentioned motorways, but do we do it on specific streets in Charlottetown or in rural villages or what?
So currently there are 6 monitoring stations. We do diffusion tube modelling for nitrous oxides and the ROS and PM levels on the road. So there are locations, I don't know the specific locations, but I can get that and share it to you. I'd need to get those off Leslie. Only 3 of those show levels slightly above where we would like them to be, but still below where that you would need in air quality management areas. There's only 3 that have showed a slight increase in recent years, and 3 I've shown a decrease. But I'm aware that we are looking at in 2020 monitoring, including some new locations to see if any new data can be used to help policy implications for ourselves, where we should be monitoring on planning applications, where we'll need air quality assessments done as part of the application. So there is further work being done there, but I can ask for that location detail and share it with you. I just don't have specific ones. We don't monitor on the motorway specifically for ourselves. It is on roads like the A6. I think is one of the ones that I do know, and they tend to be near junctions where we know that there is more likely to be traffic generating air quality issues because of junctions there and heavy usage.
Yeah, I would think.
Sorry, Roy. I was just going to add to that. We do publish annually an annual monitoring report on air quality, and at the back of that report, and we can circulate that, Chair, to all members on this group tomorrow. We publish that annually, and that does include all of the locations and the findings of those locations. That's a public document. That's something that we're required to publish.
Yeah, no, it's just that I would think that the inner link road round by the bus station would be heavily polluted, and when I think that if it is heavily polluted, you've got an outdoor eating area at the new restaurant open there. Is that not a problem that we should be looking at when we're looking at where places should be allowed to eat?
So when you monitor the air quality, the distance from the road, so like 10-20 meters after which actually the air quality levels are so low that there isn't an impact. Right. So it's not, it's not because you're near a road. It's a distance from the road, and I think those seating areas are quite some distance from the road. But it might well be one of the ones that we can look at. I know the A6 is monitored, but I think it's further up towards the hospital junction there.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that as well, Roy, that we do try as well to put in landscaping buffers into those kind of areas to try and create a separation, but also ensuring that planting is obviously, again, improving the air quality around it as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're muted, Chair.
Come on, right. So sorry. I'm chair of governance of my local school on the A6 in Whitley Woods, and every governors meeting the last few times, people have been asking about air pollution outside school because, as you will know, 9 o'clock in the morning or 8:45, cars roll up and left running while the kids get out, and then off they go. But we are right on the A6. And we just think it would be good just to have a check on that school, just to see how things are at that time in the morning and also in the afternoon when they all come out about 3:30.
We could certainly look at that. I mean, schools is something that will be reflected in the strategy action plan. The issue is, and a number of authorities do projects or schemes around trying to encourage parents to use more active measures or methods of getting to school, or even to do the drop-offs some distance away and walk the last mile. But they don't tend to be that popular. Or what schools find is, and environmental health teams have found that they'll do them for a period of time and then it'll tail off. And then the old habits start again. It does really need a concerted commitment longer term to make sure. But we can certainly look at that, Chair, definitely.
Well, that would be good, because if you found out that the air pollution was large outside various schools, and you told parents about that, they might well drop the kids off half a mile away and let them walk in. And as you say, then they'll probably keep it up on a regular basis. But we'll have to see. Yes, Roy. Any further questions? Right.
Chair, I've got
no, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Caroline, have you got anything further to add?
I was just going to comment, one of the things that the air quality strategy is committed to, is picking up on what Zoe was saying, is public engagement, and particularly with schools. It was, education at the school level. So it is getting through that point that you were making about the schools, telling people about the issues of dropping sorry, some noise. Letting people know that there are alternative ways, like the walking buses. So there are initiatives which the air quality strategy is looking at and looking to promote. But community engagement and public awareness is one of the big changes that we need to overcome on this issue, to make people realise that actually it does have significant issues.
Yeah, true. I agree. Okay. Anybody got any further questions? Well,
Chair, I've got my hand up.
Sorry, I don't see any hands up. Okay, fire away.
I'd just like to know where we stand on the Heartwood with the hundreds of extra houses that's being built around there, plus the motorway traffic. Is that part of the places where you record?
I'd have to check that, Marion, and come back to you. I don't know all of the individual locations, so I'd need to check that and then come back to you tomorrow, if that's okay.
That's brilliant, yeah, because residents have got a lot of concerns in that area with all the extra houses and the traffic that it's going to generate, plus the Strawberry Fields development as well. So if you could come back to me on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Of course, yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay, well, can I thank Zoe and Caroline very much for the start of this. It's a big topic, and I'm certain over the next few months or years it'll be debated a great deal in the council. So thank you for the way it started, and let's hope we get the right answers in the long term. Thank you very much. Now, if you want to continue, I know your daughter's appearing any time now. I'm certain you won't want to.
He's actually a little boy. He's just got in the car.
Oh.
He's just got in the car now.
So,
no, Daniel.
So if you want to depart, you can do with pleasure. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your time, Chair.
Thank you. Bye. Okay. Right. We'll move on to the item 8, which is the leisure contract. Angela. I am muted.
I'm off. I'm here. Thank you.
Okay.
Apologies.
Before you start, Angela, I'm going to say this was on to look at how the new contract was set up, really. So we're working backwards way now, really. So apologies for that. But we're interested to know the history of how it all came about, the contract being lost, really.
Yeah, no problem, Chair. So members of this group will particularly perhaps remember that it was as late back in 2017-18 when we first started to look at the longer term options for our leisure centres. We did a piece of work to consider what those broad options could look like, and the market testing and advice that we received. excuse me, apologies. The market advice that we received at that time and following that process was to go to the open market to leisure providers to bid to operate our leisure facilities. So a procurement process commenced throughout 2019, with a plan to award the decision in June 2020. Excuse me. As the epidemic hit, the award decision was delayed in the spring of this year, and that was to allow bidders to consider what was then becoming known around the impacts of COVID on the leisure sector, which at that point many operators had been closed on the government's instruction. So we had 3 bidders left in the process at that point, and we allowed them to resubmit their financial bids. So that process took place, and we delayed the award of the bid slightly and continued with the procurement process, and a preferred bidder was selected. And members may remember that we have brought that before members to advise that Life Leisure were the preferred bidder. So that process happened at the end of July. Work commenced to mobilise the contract with the new operator throughout August, but in the early stages of September, the new operator, advised that the more recent known impacts of COVID on their business meant that they were struggling to agree to be able to sign the contract and deliver all of the conditions that were within the contract. Because members may recall that within the bid, there was a requirement to pay a financial contribution back to the council from years 3 onwards of the leisure contract. So officers from within the council spent the following 7 to 10 days aiming to work with the operator and to find ways to address the financial impacts and find a solution so that the operator could continue. Members might recall that within the plans for the leisure contract, it was always recognised that within the first 18 months, there would need to be a financial easing payment made to any operator to accommodate the refurbishment of the sites and closures and the impact that that would have. Despite this work, the operator decided that they were going to withdraw their bid for the contract, and that was roughly about 19 days before the contract was due to transfer on the 1st of October. So we then considered the options that were available to us. We considered the option of approaching the existing operator, who at that point we were already exchanging letters via solicitors around payments that they actually wanted to receive from the council, which the council disputed, and that was around they felt that we should be contributing to their loss of income. And the council's position was that we should be contributing, if at all, to increase costs. So the other consideration was to look at the other operators that were still left in the bidding process. But because of the time that was left to mobilise the contract, we would still be left without any operator to transfer the leisure services staff to, and to be able to mobilise in time for a 1st of October transfer. The best option that we felt was available was to bring these services back in-house. So we brought a paper to General Purposes Committee on the 16th of September, which outlined those proposals, outlined the anticipated costs and losses, and also noted that we would also, once the operation was brought in-house, as an interim solution, consider the longer term solutions for the leisure services. So since that time, officers across the council have been working through all the aspects of transferring and setting up the leisure services from IT, finance, HR, and planning for the delivery of the leisure services, with all the staff transferring to Chorley Council as council employees with effect from today. As a result of the operators transferring, we always knew there would need to be a closure period. That's been communicated to all of the members, and the site's closed on the 30th and will remain closed for just a week and a half up until the 12th of October. And that will give us the opportunity to bring in new kits and just generally clean up the sites and remove items that have been replace items, apologies, that have been removed by the previous operator. Other impacts as a result of bringing the staff across into the council is that the staff will no longer be on furlough, which they have currently been on furlough, and that will mean that we will be able to reopen phone lines to leisure centres which were closed down by the existing operator to minimise the overheads and keep as many staff as possible on the furlough scheme. This means that when we open on the 12th, we will have sufficient staff to be able to operate a manual booking system whilst we are in the final stages of bringing in a new software which we've had to develop and negotiate and commission within the past 2 weeks. We've sent letters out, as I've previously mentioned, to all members and conducted some social media posts, and there are further communications planned to go out in the subsequent 7 to 10 days to keep members updated of what's happening, the reopening dates, and what the procedures will be for booking when we reopen on the 12th. So that's the update from my side, Chair, but I am very happy to answer questions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Angela. It must have been a devastating blow to hear a month before, when you felt everything was going well and ready for the takeover, to be told that these people were walking away. When they said they'd walk away, was there any further discussions with them? Were they quite adamant they were going to walk away from the deal?
Yeah, it was clearly a very, very difficult decision for them to make, and we spoke with the Board of Trustees, who explained that under it was a very unusual circumstance to be in, and would not be a situation that they anticipated finding themselves in. So they were mutually, I think they attempted to find a solution themselves, but were realistic to advise that they were not in a strong place. So I guess that they may have been very concerned about their long-term viability for themselves, and to take a contract on when they were so uncertain potentially around their own future, I guess, was a major factor. And I think that they felt that despite it being, as you say, Chair, it was quite a devastating blow, I think that they felt that it was the best option to be quite straightforward about the realisticness of taking the contract on.
Was there any discussions about delaying taking over, shall we say, for 6 months or till the next financial year? Was that discussed, or did they want to make it a complete away from it all?
Yeah, so we did have some discussions about some alternative options, but I think that they felt that would only be delaying an inevitable outcome. They have provided as much support as we've needed, so they have allocated people from within their organisation to support us in this process. But the options that they presented, or the discussions that we had around continuing over a number of months, would have still left us in the same situation.
Yes. I must admit it. Having said that, it sounds like you've worked extremely hard to get things where they are now, and a week on Monday going to open. So really, it isn't. It would appear not to be as big a disaster as probably first thought. Am I right in thinking that? Or
I think you're quite. I think that's absolutely right, Chair. I think a number of weeks ago it did feel, and it has been an enormous task. And I think we've been very lucky that council officers and services across the council have all put have worked extremely hard to understand what we need to do firstly, and then to mobilise that as well. So I think it is absolutely all credit to the teams and the will across the council. Yes, we are in a fairly good position, The major aspects have been addressed. The 2P of the staff obviously was not a small task. There was a number of big IT implications, infrastructure, and planning for how we move forward. But we are in a reasonable position. Yeah, and I think we're all quite stunned at what's been achieved.
Yeah, very good. I congratulate and say well done. Just one further point before I bring other people. What did the Active Nations say about all this? Were they laughing behind your back, saying, oh, if you continue with those, will be?
I think potentially, Chair, there was, but they acted with a reasonable level of dignity in any communications that we had. But I think we might have spoken to members previously to say that they haven't made this exit process smooth for us, and we are currently drafting a legal letter to be presented to Active Nation that covers off the issues that they've presented to us during the exit, and some breaches of contract and financial recovery.
Yeah. So that's still in the negotiations at the back of it all.
Yes, yeah, well. And they're ongoing. Currently.
Yeah. Very good. Anybody got any questions?
Chair, I'm going to have to leave the meeting now.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bev, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Have you any comments to make about it all? Really? I know you'll be in the forefront of all this, like Angela's been, really. So I'll say to you again, well done, and that you've got so far so quickly without a great deal of hassle. Well, it might have been a lot of hassle, but it sounds though it's been done very, very quickly, and well done for that.
Yeah, I think Angela's covered the main points, but it has been quite challenging, and we were fortunate actually that Life Leisure were decent enough to come, to be honest with us, at the start of the process, and also to provide some advice to us on what sort of things that we needed to do in order to get up and running. So they were in essence really they were the right operator because they've acted so decently. Just unfortunately they can't take on the contract.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, I mean, fingers crossed that a week on Monday things start and continue to be satisfactory, really. I've just got one further question before anybody else will come in. I mentioned on Tuesday night at the council, are you intending talking to the second preferred company?
Yeah, so there is a piece of work that we need to do now once we've mobilised and got up and running for the interim, and that is to look at what are the options that are available to us now moving forward. To be able to go to the second and third operator, because the conditions of the procurement are now quite different. It looks like we'll have to go back and have a look at the OSU regulations and see whether we need to just reset what the contract now looks like. But there is a piece of work that will be underway now. So we are still having some conversations with the operators that are left in. And how we do that from a procurement route, we might just need to go back and have a look at that, whether we need to end the current procurement process and start a new one that's slightly remodelled is the most likely option.
Yeah. Very good. Well, very success with that as well. Anybody got any questions? Matt Lynch, I can't see you anywhere on here. Is it behind me? Hi, Matt.
Hiya. Thanks, Chair. Just obviously, this is someone unexpected. Can you just lay out time-wise what the plan of action will be? Is there a minimum term that we'll be seeking to manage these leisure centres? Also, obviously, if we do manage these over, say, 6 months and we are somewhat successful, is there a possibility that we will actually look at it to keep it in the house? And if that's the case, would that be expanded to other leisure offers that we have, such as the management contract at Duxbury Park Golf Club? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So yeah, I think, Councillor Lynch, that we need at least a minimum of the next six months to see what the market looks like and how this works for us as a council. So I think we'd be easily looking into, I think, spring of next year before we're even in a position to have assessed how the sites are running and what the future of leisure is looking like and what the future of the industry is like. And we've obviously got professional advice as well within the industry that can help guide us through that process. So I think that's the length of time that we're looking at the moment. That was the first part, I think. Apologies if I miss anything off. In terms of if they were successful, would we keep them in-house? I think we'd need to bring something back to members to outline to you what we think success looks like. But I'm sure that the decision of whether to go back out to the market would be based on the financial impacts and the delivery of service. So I couldn't say whether we would or we wouldn't do that, but obviously we will do. We would be considering what's having the best impact for residents and the longer term sustainability. So that would be the sorts of things that we'd be considering around that decision of keeping them in-house or going back out to market. In terms of the third part of the question around the other arrangements that we have for people to manage sites, it's slightly different with the lease arrangement that we have with Parkwood and Glendale, and that's purely because the arrangement that we've got with the leisure centres is under a management contract, which was due to expire, and it's just this slightly different. So we don't have that ability to terminate the management contract with Glendale because that's a lease arrangement. So unless there was a frustration of the lease, we wouldn't be in a similar position as we are now with the leisure contract. So it's just a slightly different. If the lease was frustrated, it would novate to the council. And that's just particularly in reference to the golf facilities. So that is what would happen as a default.
Matt, do you want to come back on that? Anything?
Yeah, I just wonder, Chair, with the fact that this operator has walked away, and I appreciate that no contract has been signed, I just wonder whether it exposes the council to any form of risk in respects of other people either leasing, managing services for us in the future, and whether there's almost a perception that, due to COVID, due to whatever reasons, that people can just walk away. And I just hope that this doesn't repeat itself. I know we're in unprecedented times, but I think it's just it just seems a little bit too easy for them to walk away and for the council to pick up the pieces.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry. No, I was just saying. Well, they hadn't signed, Matt, at the time when they did walk away, and the contract with Active Nation was finishing. So it's completely different to Glendale. And as a council, we were personally, as the exec member, I was quite reluctant to go down the council running the leisure centres because it's not something that we do. So I would be even more reluctant to take the golf on, especially when I know you have issues up there, Matt, when you go and play. But compared to the leisure centre, we have very small amounts of complaints to get for Glendale. It ticks along quite nicely.
Anything to say, Matt? Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a difference here between everyday complaints about places, and actually more of a wider view of who is best to run our facilities. I mean, you look at Preston at the moment. This week I've seen a campaign to save Westview Leisure Centre because Preston are looking to close, their leisure facilities. What concerns me is not just the viability, but making sure that residents have the best offer. My issue with certain facilities is very separate from this. I just feel like that not that COVID is being used as an excuse to not take on the contract, but it just seems, I don't know, should we have had this tied up a little bit sooner, a smoother transition into a new operator? Timescales wise, should this have been a done deal months ago, or is it normal practice? I'm just trying to get to that point where we've not got to a position where we've had to do this. It's the only viable option. So I was just trying to understand, what it does going forward, certainly, but also, can we learn anything from this?
Are you happy for me to answer, Chair? And I see your point, Councillor Lynch, around the timescales that were left. Under the schedule for this contract, we were due to appoint the operator in June to transfer in October, and that's, I think, had we not extended to allow the bidders to resubmit, which was the most sensible thing to do, and had we at that point bidders maybe advised that that all of the bidders were retracting their bids, we would have then had a clearer position that this was a completely different situation, and we would have had a little bit more time. But the fact that all of the bidders resubmitted, they resubmitted similar financial bids, and I think it's actually just down to the fact that the operator that was selected were trying very hard to find a way to make it work. So I think if we'd have we were on schedule for the procurement process. All that we could have hoped for is that, one, that COVID didn't happen, and it did, and maybe secondly that that we were made aware by the bidders much earlier that it was a very different financial situation. But I think it's very difficult when the bidders are wanting to gain new contracts, I guess, to make that decision so early. So I guess they did what they felt was best for their organisations, which was to try to still make the contract work.
Thank you, Chair. That answers my questions.
You're on mute, John.
Sorry, I keep. If there's no further questions, can I thank Angela for her the work she's done over the last 6 months? It's a horrendous amount of work you've had to do, and all the best for October the 12th when you reopen.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, and if you'd like to stop, you can do. If not, if you want to go home, you can go home with pleasure. Thank you very much. Right, item 9, report on the task and finish group on sustainable public transport. Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, it's early days with it. We had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago. It was a scoping meeting. We had a presentation from James Hoskinson, who's a planning assistant at the council, who went through the 2019 Sustainable September campaign that the council did in terms of the findings that the council had from how staff travelled to work and different thoughts and feedback that staff had about how transport could be improved in terms of travelling to work. I believe they are, we're looking at rerunning it in September as well, and they're going to report back on to see if anything's changed in the last 12 months, and also how COVID has impacted in terms of how staff travel to work, and obviously with people working from different locations as well now, more home working, that'll no doubt be a big factor. We then went on to sort of obviously the scoping of the task group. Obviously it is a wide-ranging topic, so I know we'll be tying up with Nina in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to try and put it into some sort of like realistic sort of aims and things for the task group. But some of the things that people suggested were obviously around rail provision in the borough, because I know there have been quite a lot of concerns around different elements of the service we do or don't get in terms of Northern Rail and some of the issues we face across the borough. Bus service provision and the fact that, you know, we don't really have the service anymore. It's more about how commercial operators can make money from the services. Sustainable funding of bus services. Obviously, we're all aware around some of the issues we've had around subsidising bus services and looking at a more sort of sustainable footing for bus services in the borough. Obviously, taxis as well was something that members fed back. I believe there was a recommendation from the last task group around looking at electric/hybrid vehicles. So we're going to speak to licensing about that. Some other comments came in as well around sort of community transport provision and looking at dial-a-ride, because obviously everybody doesn't travel by rail, bus or taxis. We do have a lot of residents that use community transport in the borough, and I know there have been some concerns about provision of dial-a-ride across the borough in the last sort of 12 months or so. Some other comments members fed back were around the difficulty the council has in enforcing public transport. I'm sure we're all aware of that. Tackling social isolation, again, not just in rural areas. You know, there are parts of the town centre and some of the other areas that have issues around social, if I can say it, social isolation in respect to transport. Cost implications as well in terms of use of public transport. I know that was something that we discussed. I know particularly where I am in Adlington, we do have a lot of residents that travel to Blackrod and Horwich to use public transport because it's cheaper in a nutshell in Greater Manchester. Some members have also attended a LGA webinar this week on the decarbonisation of transport around the role of buses. So I think they're going to sort of feed back at the next meeting in terms of what they got out of that session. Other issues that we discussed were around sort of environmental concerns and some of the stuff that's already been raised around air quality and some of the older vehicles that are used with our public transport provision in the borough. And then we kind of went on to sort of who will consult in terms of stakeholders. So some of our initial thoughts were around the county council, with them being the transport authority, the cabinet member at the county council, Keith Hidden, some of the bus companies locally. Again, there was quite a lot of feedback not to just keep going straight back to Stagecoach, even though they are the more dominant bus company, but to look at some of the to speak to people like Tyrers and to see how they operate differently, with it not all being about, you know, profit. To speak to the MP, you know, obviously they get a lot of feedback and a lot of ideas about transport in the borough. Also to perhaps speak to another local authority, maybe a local authority in Lancashire and somewhere outside of Lancashire, and councillors and members of the public as well, and perhaps do some surveys and that kind of thing and see what people fed back. But once we haven't sort of signed off the scoping document yet, but once we've got that signed off, and then we know where we're going. So thank you.
But good. It sounds you've got a lot of work to do. How many meetings do you hope to have in this municipal year? I don't think you get this finalised with all this.
I know. That's where we've got to. That's why I think we're going to sort of sit down next week and put it into some realistic. Because I mean, as we said at the meeting, it is a wide-ranging topic.
It is. Yeah.
And just to sort of get some direction as to where we want to go with it, because you can't look at everything. It's,
No. Well, I agree, but I mean, everything's quite important. What you mentioned is important.
It is. Yeah.
The question, it might well be you do half this municipal year and half the next municipal year, really. Rail next year, because I mean, as regards rail, the white paper came out recently, didn't it, about, I won't say nationalised, but the government now run British Rail, or railway, so it might well be to give them 6 months and then get them in to see what the plans are for the future anyway.
Yeah. It's I think I mean, definitely the main feedback from members was around the bus services and and not just sort of coverage, but also looking at but I mean, thinking about the prospect of a combined authority and things like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So we'll put it into some form of schedule next week.
Very good, and the best of luck.
Thank you.
Anybody got any questions on that? And we'll look forward to the first report, or after the next task group meeting anyway, see how you're getting on. So thank you very much on that. So we come to the last item tonight, which is the Overview and Scrutiny work programme. There is a work programme on the agenda, which is the County Council Scrutiny work programme, which is quite interesting about what they are doing at county level. If you can have a look at that, it might well be some of those things on here might well be able to put onto our work programme. I think if you look at our work programme, we're fairly full for this year, I think. I don't think there's anything else we can do unless any members have got any tasks that we could do in one meeting, or look at something in one meeting. It might well be once the leisure contract is up and running, possibly in January, we could have a look and a further report on how the leisure contract's going on. If it means one meeting, we'll have a separate meeting or something, really. But we'll see how we feel about it. But other than that, I think if you look at the work programme for this year, we are fairly busy. Any comments about that?
Yes,
okay.
Chair.
Yes. Sorry, Roy.
Yeah.
Yes, you have.
I noticed on the work programme that tonight we were supposed to be discussing the adoption estate adoption.
Yes.
That's not come up.
No.
We have quite a few problems within my ward, Southwest, where residents are complaining that they aren't adopted, and I keep getting problems that the county council said, well, they're waiting for developers not doing. I think it's a serious problem, because there are defective works on these estates and they need to be remedied. So I think it needs to be brought to a committee meeting and discussed. We only discussed items of public open spaces, which we adopt. We never tackled the adoption of the estates, the roads, etc.
No, the chap from, or the officer from county who was going to come tonight is on leave, so he will be here at the end of January for the January 28th meeting. But I mean, I'm certain if you've got any complaints before that to get into, I don't know what the gentleman's name is, but if he can let you know the name, you can probably have a word with him before that. But he's certainly down to come to the January meeting.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I'm not blaming the county. I've got a particular problem on one of my developments where the developer is saying they're having a meeting within the next 14 days with the builder, with the county. But I've just had an email back from Julia or from Keith Hidden saying that there's no, they've given the builder problems about the conditions, but they're still waiting for the builder to come back. Right. It's, the residents are up in there saying, well, what's happening?
Well, it is a little thing, and I mean, it can go on for years. But I mean, I think they have been to an overview and scrutiny meeting previously, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, and said they were trying to increase get the time down quickly, but it doesn't seem to have happened. So we look forward to seeing this guy at the end of.
I think the problem doesn't come from county. I think it comes from the contractors, the developers who don't want to do all the necessary work to bring the estate up to adoptable standards, which is leaving the constituents and the residents in a.
Yeah. Well, I don't dispute anything you're saying, Roy. I think it's a problem we've had with contractors, developers over the last few years, really, and no doubt the officers from county will say the same thing, really. So, but we'll have to see. I mean, it might well be that there's something we might be able to do about it once we hear from what he's got to say. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Roy. If everybody's happy with what the work programme is, we'll say thank you very much for the evening. And I won't say a safe journey home. There's only one of us and Nina. So thank you for your attendance, everybody, and keep well.
Thank you, John. Good night.
Thank you, John. Right. Good night.